everybody, it's Sharon here. Welcome back to my channel for those who are returning, and welcome to any new subscribers that may be visiting for the first time. This video is going to be a little bit of a thrown together video. I'm excited to share with you some DIY that I've been working on. I've mentioned to you before the storage boxes to keep my cards in, all of my little journal cards. This is a box of things from Art Vintages, and I've been storing them in my trolley, which sits just to my left, and unfortunately I only have enough room for 4 boxes, and I do have a little bit more than 4. I'm not actually sure. I may only be using one of them for the journaling cards, but I do have some other bits and pieces stored in them as well, and I've been wanting to find a way of bringing them all together and having them more effective to use, basically. So one of the tubs of cards is actually on my right. It's on the table on my right, and unfortunately I have stacked things on top of it, so obviously not a very effective method of using them. And so I talked to hubby about creating some little, almost like pigeonhole shelves that I could possibly use to slide them into, almost like, when I thought about it, I actually had the catalogue card drawers from the old library catalogue cards, storage drawers in mind, and they're not going to be a perfect fit. I actually have asked hubby to make them higher and wider on either side so that I have plenty of area around them, because some of the things I'm storing them are actually taller than the drawer itself. So I'm going to take my camera off my camera stand and see if I can guide you through a little bit of the mayhem. Please don't judge, because I've mentioned to you before in previous videos, I moved into this space in quite a hurry. Sometimes when we come up with storage solutions, we don't always think the whole process through, and this is one of those things. I decided that I would create storage using these drawers, but I really didn't know how many I needed either, and so it's ended up being bigger than I expected, and hence the need to come up with a way of storing them to bring them all together and not have them as what am I trying to say? Not have them look as cluttered as they do at the moment. So I will take you off the stand, and the lighting isn't going to be great, so please bear with me. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so this is the top of my storage trolley, and you can see I have 2 drawers in the top. I also have some masking tape and double-sided tape. I have the plates for my Sizzix, some tea-stained ephemera at the back, and I've had my paper bags in here because I needed to access them easily. And then down here I actually have the Christmas fabric and Christmas. This is a drawer of Christmas ephemera that I created because I was making the Christmas altered book, and on this side under this I have another drawer, and I'm keeping my book papers in there from my glue book. So that was just another purpose I came up with for these drawers. So I really need to come up with a way of making my clutter more organized. In the bottom of my trolley, I have some books and things readily available to pull book pages from if I need them. So that's where that's at. And then I will show you where I want to put the cupboard that hubby built me, and hopefully it will fit. Fingers crossed. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so a little bit embarrassing showing you this, but this is the chaos that I have been creating / living with. In the back, so I have shelves on my desk, and this is the, sorry, I just realized I'm very close to the camera, so I need to quieten down a little bit or I'll be yelling in your ear. This is the set of shelving that I have sitting on my table. This is the bottom of it, and at the back along here I have some mason jars that I've removed the lids, and I'm just using that to store different crafting tools. You can see this one over here has strings and fabric scraps and things in it. I'm really not using those at the moment. I forget that they're there, so I need to come up with a plan B for those. And the storage tools, as you can see, they kind of get buried behind everything else that I'm using. This is my my more readily used crafting tools. This is the one I go to pick up what I need. And it's gotten to the stage, I actually had that sitting on my craft table along the side, and I shifted it, which was great because it gave me more space on my table, but it doesn't really fit the space that it's in now. So I'm hoping a lot of those things will actually be able to sit in the top of my trolley once I shift things around. So my baby wipes are here. I have a drawer with the inks, and I'm hoping that that will fit into one of the trays or pigeonholes that are in the shelving unit. I have a couple of tiles with some paints on them that I've been using behind the scenes, and I haven't wanted to finish with those, so I've just set them to the side. And at the front here I have some tissue paper, some prints that I've made. On my right I have some embroidery cottons that I have actually hand washed, and I am now pulling them apart and popping them into this container. So whoops, I'm just wrapping them onto the little cards. So that's something else I've been working on behind the scenes, and it's a fiddly job, let me tell you. I picked up the embroidery cottons from a garage sale and decided that I wanted to wash them before I use them. Something I never thought I would do. But I'm excited to have, this is just one lot. So, and I also have tissue paper that I mentioned to you. I had some scraps that I had been trying to decide what to do with them, and so that's another project. I want to stamp those so I can use them. I have my snippet rolls that I've made recently, all sitting here because I haven't done anything with them yet. I have some pockets that I've been working on, a little bit of slow stitching, probably not in focus. Little bit of slow stitching, and I just used the same, what is it called? I think it's kitchen cotton. It's what I use to do my bookbinding, and I really love the organic look of it, so I decided I wanted to try that with a little bit of slow stitching. Love the way that came out. Haven't decided what I'm doing with those yet, but we will see. Doing these kind of led me to organising my embroidery cotton, so a little bit of a double whammy. There's another piece of patchworking type messy stitching, just something I put together one afternoon while hubby was home. Just lots of stuff. So now I've let you into my deep dark secret. We will get to, I also have a project here that I haven't finished, so it's on the go. I have some, whoops, sorry, my tea bags here in this little box that I made, ready to be used. So, okay, so I'm going to get busy. I'm going to move all of this out of the way so I can bring the shelves in. I will show you a little step-by-step process of the shelves that I made. Now, I do want to share with you, I had a little bit of an experiment. It hasn't gone as well as I hoped, and you'll see in the photos. So they're not 100% the way I wanted them to be, because I did decide to play with the paint. but I've actually done, golly, I have to think, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, roughly 11 coats of paint and then 3 coats of lacquer altogether. And I said to hubby, I actually ran out of the white paint. I said to hubby, I'm done. I'm just going to use them as they are. I have some other furniture in here that I would like to do up. Not sure if I will use the same technique, but I was like, they're actually usable as they are. I think I'm just going to bring them into my space, use them, make sure they're going to work for me before I put any more time into them. So what I did was I made my own chalk paint. I used a household, it's a household paint, and it's called Aqua Enamel, I believe, or Aqua Enamel, from Dulux here in Australia. I purchased it from Bunnings. It was left over in our shed, and to that I added, this is a bag of fine white marble dust, or calcium carbonate it's also called, and I picked this up, oops, sorry, I moved it down so I could read the information. I picked this up from the Sydney art store, just popping that away. I purchased it over 12 months ago, and I actually purchased it for another project, and I never ended up needing to go ahead with that other project. So that bag has been sitting there unused for that time. Now I opened it to make my chalk paint, and what's left in the bag is an indication of what I used. I will say a little goes a long way. My ratios I ended up using for my chalk paint were 1 cup of paint to 4 tablespoons of the calcium carbonate, or the fine white marble dust, and I used 2 tablespoons of water. Now I used just a plastic cup, similar to this one, which has a little bit of water in it, and I put in my 4 tablespoons of the powder, the calcium carbonate, and then I added 2 tablespoons of distilled water, and I stirred that with a paddle pop stick until it was completely dissolved. So I ended up with almost like a runny paste, almost a little bit runnier than toothpaste. And then I took it was a clip, no, what are they called? I'll pop a photo of the container I used to pop my paint in. I just grabbed a little container, something that was picked up from the supermarket. I'm trying to think of what they're called. They have little tabs that click into place. I decided to use that to mix my paint in because obviously I needed something and I wanted to be able to seal it. So I put my cup of paint into that container, poured in my calcium carbonate and water mix, and stirred the two together. And again, I just used a paddle pop stick. It was a fairly small quantity that I was using, and I used that to stir it all together. Now the experiment part of that was that I decided to add distress ink to the mix. The paint I was using was, as I said, Aqua Enamel. It has quite a bit of a sheen to it, and it's quite white. It's the same paint I used to paint my little cupboard that I have in my craft space, and I will link the video of that in the description below for you if you'd like to have a look. Love the way that turned out. But I decided I really just was experimenting. I wanted to try and see what the distress ink would do. I saw a crafter, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody I was watching put it into some gesso, and I went, oh, interesting, maybe that would work in my paint. So I decided I'd try it. I started with, I think, 4 drops, then I went to 8. I think I ended up with 16 before I started painting. So 16 drops to my 1 cup of paint. And I did one coat. I think it was on the outside of the cupboard, and I liked it, but it was still very bright. So I did the inside of the cubicles, and I actually doubled it, and it looked great. It looked really, really good. So then I did another coat over everything with the doubled mix, and it looked fabulous. I sanded it back. It looked amazing. And then I added my lacquer. Now the lacquer I've used, I'll pop a picture here. It is a water-based lacquer. So not thinking about that, it actually bled into the lacquer. The vintage photo bled into the lacquer, and it was very patchy. And I really wasn't happy. I did think about just going ahead with it and using it as it was, but I really wasn't happy. So I decided to repaint the whole thing. I ended up mixing, I had possibly a cup to 3/4 of a cup of paint left in my container when I went to do a second lot of paint, and I added another 1.5 cups of paint, and then the equivalent quantities of powder and water to that mix, and I stirred that into the mixture that I already had that had the vintage photo in. My aim was to bring it right back, and so I did a coat over part of the cupboard, which used up a little bit more paint, and then I added another 1/2 cup to the mix. I calculated it basically quartered the amount of vintage photo ink to paint ratio, which brought me back to about the 4 drops, which probably wasn't worth putting in there. But then I added my lacquer to the final outcome. So painted it with 2 coats of paint. I resanded it and added my lacquer. And silly me, did not think I added extra lacquer so I used another one of those containers to put my lacquer into, because the vintage photo was coming out of my paintbrush and into the lacquer. So when I was doing it in the first round, so I got another container, put some lacquer into that container to stop that from tainting the rest of my container, and I started to paint and didn't actually think. So my paintbrushes, when I'm working on a project, when I finished using them between each layer, I just wrap them in a Glad wrap all the way around the brush and try and make it fairly tight. I twist the top of it so that it's ready to use for the next coat, rather than washing it out in between coats. And I'll show you a photo here of my paintbrushes all wrapped up. So I have one paintbrush for my chalk paint and one paintbrush for my lacquer. So when I went to do the second round of lacquer coats, I didn't realize or think about the fact that that paintbrush was actually used on the first round and had a lot of vintage photo in the paintbrush. So the first couple of cubicles I did on the inside of my cupboard, I used the paintbrush as it was and ended up with pretty much the same effect that I ended up with on the cupboard when I lacquered it the first time. So it had a streaked vintage photo colour look through the lacquer, which is what I was trying to avoid. So I added a little more lacquer to my container and I washed out my brush and kept painting because I was just like, I've run out of paint. My paint pot was all but empty and I was like, I'm not putting any more money into this project at this stage. Lesson learned. So once I cleaned out my brush and started to apply the lacquer, I didn't have anywhere as much of the colour coming through. And for the majority of the shelving, I'm quite happy with the finish in the end. It is a lot creamier, I suppose you could say, on the inside, but the inside is where I had most of the paint with the more pronounced vintage photo through it. So lesson learned, I won't put vintage photo into my paint again. But sometimes you just need to try these things to see what happens and where it will go. I said to hubby, he told me that the shelves, they're not perfect, he said, when he gave them to me. He used some some old MDF boards that we had sitting in the shed that he had told me were a little bit warped, and I had said to him I really didn't care. I just wanted something that would get these containers. Oh, and buried under here is another one of those containers that would get them off my desk and give them a place to actually live properly. So okay, so now that I've explained all of that, I'm sorry it took a little longer than expected, but it's been quite a process. I'm going to shift things around. I'm going to bring my shelves in and I will show them to you once I have them installed. I'm going to just show you. I have a non-slip liner here that I picked up from my local cheap shop. I think it was from Bargain Buyers. It was $2.50. I'm going to sit some of that underneath the shelving. I'm just using a trestle table here, and I actually have my sewing machine on this table, and I will tell you, I have had all sorts of problems with the sewing machine bouncing around. I actually spent just as much time holding or trying to hold my sewing machine in place when I was sewing as I did actually guiding whatever I was sewing through or underneath the needle. And let me tell you, it's a fine art between making sure your machine doesn't move and actually having your stitching come out looking reasonably straight. So I had a little bit of a moment, light bulb moment just recently, and I went, I've got some spare non-stick or non-slip mat that I use for something else. I'm going to sit that under my sewing machine and see if that helps. And oh my goodness, best thing I've done in ages. So I've decided to pop some of this under the cupboard, partly because I use the sewing machine on this table and I don't want the cupboard moving forward while I'm sewing. So unfortunately, this table does have quite a bit of movement in it. So okay, so now that I've explained all that to you, I'm going to get busy and I will show you. I will pop in some photos, some progress photos of the cupboard. What I didn't mention to you either was that before I did my major coats of chalk paint, I did use just some acrylic craft paint, and I will show you what I used. So I just used this craft paint. And this is a raw umber colour. I did one coat of that around my edges, front, top, sides, bottoms, all of the edges. And then I thought maybe it would be fun to have another layer of colour. So I popped on this Liquitex craft paint, and the colour is bright aqua green. And once I put that on there, I decided I wasn't such a fan. It was a little darker than I would have liked. I was hoping it was going to be lighter, and I wished I'd have added some white to tone it down. So I was trying to decide what to do, and I really love the brown, so I ended up doing a second coat of the raw umber all the way around. So they were the first 3 layers of paint. The layers of paint, or those layers of paint, didn't go over the whole cupboard, just on the edges. And again, the photos will indicate to you what I'm talking about. So I don't think I've photographed every step, but you will certainly get the idea. So okay, so I'm off to move some things around and in the process hopefully tidy up my space a little bit and make it far more usable and user-friendly, and I'm excited. So I look forward to seeing you at the other end, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Okay, so I'm back again. I'm really excited to share with you my shelves. Now, they have actually been set up in my room for about 4 weeks, I suppose, give or take. And I wanted to try them out a little bit and get used to them before I shared the completed video with you all. And that way I could give you my feedback. So they don't look like much on camera. I'm looking at them in the camera and I'm thinking they're so much more beautiful in person. But it gives you an idea of what I've done or what my hubby and I have done. So I've got lots of information in my head that I want to share with you. I'm just trying to figure out where to start. So you'll see on the left hand side over here, the shelves don't actually have drawers in them. Now that wasn't my intention, but once I set them up I realized that those pigeonholes were actually the perfect size to fit in. I have my paper towel at the top, and then I have my baby wipes and my tissues. All of those things were taking up room on the desk in front of where the cupboards are now, or the shelving is now. The paper towel was a last minute realization that it would fit. The smaller roll, it was about half full, and I looked at it and I went, oh, maybe that will slide in next to the tissues or the baby wipes, and it did. It fit, and I went, oh, I wonder if a big roll would fit. So I will tell you, it didn't actually fit into the second row here because it was too high, but it did fit into the top. Now, the shelving, it's not an exact make. It is made, it's handmade, it's rustic. The timber was a little bit warped. Hubby did tell me that before he made it. And I said to him, I really didn't care as long as it looked okay as a finished item and it served the purpose that I wanted it to serve. I was happy for it to have a little bit of a rustic vintage feel about it, and I feel like the two of us have accomplished that so well. The way he's made it and the way I finished it off, I couldn't be happier. Now, there were some trials and tribulations with me finishing it off, as you may have seen in the lead up to getting to this point of the video. So one of the biggest issues I had was the vintage photo ink in the paint, the chalk paint that I made. It did actually seep into the lacquer that I coated the outside of the paint with, and I sanded it back at one stage and I restarted painting because I thought that would help. And when I went to lacquer, it still bled into the lacquer. Now, I could say I'm sorry I did it, but with the end result as it is, I'm not really sure I'm completely unhappy I did it. It doesn't have a perfect finish. I remember looking at it when I was lacquering it and the vintage photo had bled, and I'm going to take the camera off the stand and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm hoping I'm not too shaky for you, but in here, I don't know if you can see down the edge there, there's a distinct discoloration, and that is partly from where the ink has bled into the lacquer, and it's quite noticeable in the joints. I also have, I'm not sure you can see in here, some shells are worse than others. I actually painted it so it was laying on its back when I painted the shelves, and I had some running in the lacquer that I used to seal the paint. And when I realized that it happened, I was like, just checking my focus for you. Oh, I hope that was in focus. When that happened, I was like, maybe I need to sand it back and start again. And then I went, do you know what? The only person who's really going to see it is me. And once it has the drawers in it, it's not going to be quite so noticeable. And I don't mind that it has a little bit of a run in the paint. And to be fair, when I put these back in, I don't really look at the run marks in the paint so much as the drawer that's sitting inside it. So I said it's not perfect, and it's not. I love the shabbiness of doing a distressed look on the edges, and you can see the acrylic paint that I added underneath. I'll just see if I can zoom that in for you, or sorry, refocus. You can see the acrylic paint that I put on the edges as a first and third coat, that really dark brown. I love the way that's shown through the paint. That was exactly what I had in mind. So yes, it came up, the overall appearance came up exactly as I had pictured. So overall, I'm absolutely thrilled with the finished product, and I have thought of 1,000 ways to use the space that it has. The drawers, some of them still have the cards in them. So these three, oops, sorry, these two. This one has my inks, distress inks and archival inks, and some inking tools. I'm hoping you can see that okay. I'm kind of at an awkward angle here. Some extra ink pads. And then, whoops, it needs to sit in here just right so it will go back in. And then once I have that in there, I have my mini distress inks in this little Tim Holtz container, and I realised that that would slide in next to it. So I don't mind that the drawers aren't perfectly lined up or anything like that. It still has the overall appearance that I want it to have, but I want it to be practical. So that was a win for me, to be able to have all my inks in that one little spot. And that may change if I add to my collection or what have you, but for now they're all stored in that one spot. So this little drawer has cards. I've kind of started in the middle, haven't I? This little drawer has more cards, so just from different kits that I've purchased. Again, more cards. I think these all have cards of some, or kit pieces. And then this one here has my sewing cottons. I've been able to pop all of those and my spare bobbins into the one drawer to have them. My sewing machine is on the table to my right. Sorry, right. I'm pointing, but I'm not in camera. And so is my overlocker. So that keeps them really close to there. Obviously, I have my practical items in the far left, but still within arm's reach. So the camera is actually set up roughly where I sit to video. So I'm standing behind the chair that I would normally be sitting in, and if I reach without leaning, that's roughly where I get to. So you can see how convenient that is for me. This top drawer here has my little piece of cardboard, corrugated cardboard, that I use for stamping lines with. And then inside this one for now, I have lots of tools. I have pens and different things that I use for crafting. And I've just popped them all in there to keep them together. I did actually have my pliers and things sitting inside mason jars, but I find that's a far better way to store them. So I've got those in there at the ready. And my next drawer has my glue book pages in it, and as you can see, my drawer is quite full, so it's about time I do something with some of those. And then this one here, I've just popped in some tape, that sort of thing. Now, what I'm using these for may vary, and I'm finding that I have more and more ideas of things that I could use them for. I do have some more of these drawers stacked. I don't know if you can see this one here. I've got 4 more drawers stacked there that have got items in them, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not just thinking, I've actually talked to hubby, and I have mentioned to him how amazing the storage system is and how I have discovered that I could use a ton more just like that. So we've been discussing the possibility of making another unit, but making it much bigger. And he has told me that he's quite happy to come up with something for me. We're still kind of, well, I'm still using the drawers and cupboard as is and deciding exactly what I want and what I don't want, what I think will work and what I don't think will work. Something else I've realized, and I have next to me here. So I've mentioned my mason jars. Now this is just one of the mason jars that I have. It has lots of different threads and things in it, and I call on it every now and then while I'm crafting. And I realized, well, hubby and I were talking the other day, that it will actually stand in this unit if I were to turn the unit on its side. So I got a little bit excited about that, and I have said to hubby, perhaps if we make 2 units the same size that will fit along this desk, maybe I could use this one separately and stand it on its side and just put mason jars in it. I don't know yet, but we're also discussing the possibility of adding a row or 2 across the bottom that will store my mason jars across the bottom of the cupboard, which would be so pretty to look at. I also have some small mason jars, and I realized that they will also fit into this shelving, and I worked out I can actually fit 6 in there. I can show you because I happen to have in the drawer right next to where I'm sitting my little boho bead collection that I've made. So 4 sit in there quite comfortably. At a pinch, I I can get 6 in there. I don't necessarily like the 6 in there because it's not quite wide enough, but even fitting the 4 in there and having them toward the front for visual effect, I just think they're really pretty. So we are trying to decide how we would like to design some new shelving, but in line with this one that hubby has made me. You can see in the corner of the cupboard here a little bit more of that vintage photo where it seeped into the lacquer, but again, like I said, once the drawer is in there, nobody's ever the wiser. So as far as storage is concerned, I love my new little system, and I love it so much I want to expand on what hubby has created for me. Poor hubby. I do feel for him. He's a champion, and he's been great. If I give him suggestions, or I've actually changed the format of the next lot of shelving about 3 times so far, and he's just rolling with the punches. So it has created so much organization and so much less clutter on my workspace, just having those set up. So I'm excited to see what may occur if I end up with more shelving in here that is larger. And like I said, for the type of crafting that I'm doing and all the little bits and pieces that we gather, these drawers are a fabulous size to be able to store bits and pieces in, and to have them all in a storage unit like this has just been amazing. So I hope that I've covered everything. If you have any questions, if you'd like more feedback or more information, feel free to contact me. So a big shout out to hubby for being so incredible and making this for me. I love it. I love it so much, and I am gobsmacked at how many different things I've thought of that I can use this storage system for. So I hope this helps somebody out there become more organized, and I'm still trying to decide whether or not I want to alter the drawers. I love the look of the bamboo. Initially, when I had thought about doing these drawers, I considered perhaps decoupaging them and putting little label plates on them or handles. I still haven't decided whether I will do anything like that. I can play with them like this, and when I get bored with them, I can alter them. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, a big thank you to my hubby for being so amazing and making this for me. I love it so much, and I look forward to seeing you all soon, everybody. Happy crafting, and bye for now.